4 new heroes on the way for Battlegrounds, and we're going to talk about the details.
Hey, buddy, watch this.
Yeah, that's right. We got 4 new leaked heroes. I wasn't going to cover these right away until we got some confirmation from Blizzard, but Mike Dene, developer for Battlegrounds, was commenting on Reddit on these threads, indicating that they're real. So here we are. We're going to discuss these 4 new heroes. Before I jump into it, though, I wanted to talk to you guys. I'm launching a giveaway for 75,000 subscribers on YouTube to celebrate. We had a crazy milestone, giving away 5 $100 Blizzard gift cards. This giveaway is going to run for almost a month, up towards the beginning of Descent of Dragons for the launch. So if you win, you can pre-order packs and get Deathwing as your hero portrait, so on and so forth. There are some descriptions some details in the description below, and I'll pin a comment as well. You might see me mention this in some videos in the near future. All you got to do is follow my social media, go to Twitter, go to Discord, go to Twitch, etc. You get a ton of entries for each of those things, but you'll see that once you click the link. It's super duper easy. But have a chance to win something cool and just help continue to support the channel as well. That said, we're going to give some tips and tricks on using these and discuss how powerful I think they might be, starting off with Brann Bronzebeard and Battlegrounds, a new hero power that's passive, and it reads, after you play a Battlecry minion, give a random friendly minion +1/+1. And I think this is really cool. There's a great line of play in Battlegrounds currently where you leave a slot of your board open and you just start chaining Battlecry minions. Particularly if you have something like a Nightmare Amalgam, which many builds do currently. There are a ton of buff Battlecry minions you just keep dropping onto the board. You basically spend 2 gold for a pretty big buff on your Nightmare Amalgam, whether it's a Vermin Sensei or just like a Rock Pool Hunter. That works really nicely. And this hero power would allow you to essentially start stacking that up more and more. There are also just some nice early game spikes with things like this, right? Just an Alley Cat, for instance, becomes way better in the early game thanks to Battlebrand. So I think it has some early game board dominance implications. Like you can just get, 3-4 extra stats out sometimes just off of this hero power early on. That's amazing. Also, some late game cycle implications that are just going to help you build a board that gets bigger and bigger and bigger without really committing anything extra, because a lot of builds support that anyway. And then if you do go into a Battle Cry line of play, which I've been doing more and more lately and finding a lot of success with it, frankly, things like Crowd Favorite have been working pretty well for me. Suddenly this goes even more nuts and you get all the more value out of each of those Battle Cries. So personally, I think this one has a lot of potential because it has that early to late game flexibility. Stats, of course, matter. If Nightmare Amalgam, for instance, gets nerfed, maybe this gets a little weaker because that strategy may not pan out quite as well. But I think Battlecry builds are still a possibility, and maybe they get even better if Nightmare Amalgam goes away. Who knows? But this has the potential to be a very powerful sort of hero power. The thing you're going to have to consider for this one is keeping that board space open, looking for maybe just some splash minions you might not otherwise expect to utilize, but have some kind of positive Battlecry. Even if it's just a little token generator, those are great anyway. So great one to build on, and a lot of potential here. I think this has the possibility to be a higher tier hero power. So next up here, let's move to Sir Finley Murgleton with Power Up, a 1 gold active hero power. I guess some of these have mana as their artwork. That's fine. And it will give a random friendly minion +1/+1. If you use it, it's just going to be a random minion. And then after you sell a minion, you'll be able to refresh the hero power. So theoretically, right, if you're selling a lot of stuff off, you can start buffing your board quite a bit with Sir Finley's hero power. Now, the downside there is that this does cost gold. You have to spend 1 gold every time. So yes, you can, you get the 1 gold for selling something and you immediately put the 1 gold back into the buff, but there's a couple problems here. It's a random friendly minion. So that means it might hit something on your board that you're not investing into long term, might hit a Battlecry minion that you're just planning to get rid of later anyway. There's just a lot of ways for this one to backfire and not hit the target you care about. Beyond that, you have to spend a ton of gold on it. That's not fun. Nobody wants to spend gold on this. We like passive hero powers. Most of the active gold spending hero powers, if they're stat based instead of economy or ramp based currently, in Battlegrounds don't work that well, and I don't think this one's going to change. There's just some major downsides here. I think there are some worlds where you buy a lot of tokens and you get a pretty big mid-game swing from a hero power like this one. You just sell off your Alley Cat, you sell off your Murloc Tidehunter, you get +4/+4 on some awesome minion, but you can only sell 1 at a time, and you risk some of those tokens getting the buff, right? Because if you want it to refresh, you gotta hit the button and then refresh it, right? So there's still a risk that things get hit that you don't want to get hit. So all in all, I think there's a lot of awkwardness here. I think there's a lot of cost bundled into this hero power. For those reasons, I don't personally see Power Up and Sir Friendly making all that much sense. It might be a little better than something like Pyramid or Wag Toggle, but only barely, and probably falls to a pretty low tier. So next up here we have Elise Starseeker and Lead Explorer for her hero power. It's another passive one, and it reads, when you upgrade Bob's Tavern, get a recruitment map. And a recruitment map is going to be a spell that allows you to discover a minion, presumably, although not 100% confirmed, of the tavern tier that you just upgraded to. I've also heard another interpretation that it could be a minion of your current tier and you could stack those in hand. I don't think that's likely to be true because that would be really powerful if you just tiered up to 5 or 6 and you were able to discover 5 tier 6 minions immediately. I think it's far more likely that the tier is set when the card is added to your hand. So for instance, if you tier up to tier 3, I think the card will say discover a tier 3 minion as opposed to just discover a minion of your current tier. And I'm going to interpret at least that way. Still, I think that's really cool, right? Because essentially what happens right now is when you tier up, you sacrifice playing a minion in most cases, or buying a minion because you're spending most of your gold, or sometimes all of your gold, tiering up instead of actually getting anything. So for instance, on turn 2 right now, when you're at that 4 gold and you tier up for 4 gold, you don't actually get to do anything. You just don't buy a minion, you're playing your round 1 minion, and that's it. But with Elise, you'd actually still be able to discover a minion from tier 2, still contributing to your board. So you're kind of getting a 3 gold free unit every single time. And sometimes that's going to be a really key thing that's awesome. Other times it's going to whiff, but it's still going to be free because you were going to be tiering up anyway. So this allows you the luxury to tier up without as much downside, without losing as much health. So you can play for a far more successful ramp style of play, I think. And if you do find that defining minion early, you can really start to build out much faster thanks to Elise's hero power. So I personally think this one makes a lot of sense. I think this could be very, very strong. It's in that like Bartendotron vein, but I think it's even better because it saves you more gold and finds you more stuff, and it makes those turns easier to swallow. So for me, Elise looks like she's going to be very powerful indeed. I think this will be a high tier hero power option, and I'm really excited to see this one in action too. So next up here we have Sindragosa. And she's not Reno Jackson. Apparently, it sounds like Reno Jackson had some issues, some tech issues, some effects issues, so he wasn't going to make it into the game just yet. But we got Sindragosa instead with Stay Frosty, another passive hero power, and it reads, at the end of your turn, frozen minions get +1/+1. So if you're freezing boards, you're going to get a big old pile of stats on that board. Now, that sounds pretty cool, right? Particularly, I think, in the early game, that might be nice. For instance, going into like your 6 gold turn, if you freeze it and you're planning to buy 2 units on your 6 gold turn, you're going to get +2/+2, which in that early to mid game phase can be pretty influential. The problem for me with Sindragosa is I just don't think she's going to scale all that well, and it's only ever going to happen once per turn. So you're only going to get +1/+1 once per turn because you only end the turn with frozen minions at max once a turn, and sometimes never. Sometimes you don't freeze minions because you don't want to. The roll is more important. So maybe like every other turn, maybe 2 out of every 3 turns, this is going to hit. And beyond that, it's usually going to hit one thing because usually you don't freeze a board for multiple targets. Sometimes, the stars align. You get 2 or 3 things that you're happy you froze, but usually you're freezing for like one specific thing to complement your build, which means she's only going to add that +1/+1, to one guy every other turn or so. And I just don't think that's going to stack up that fast or scale that fast. It's also going to make you make bad decisions sometimes just because you're like, I want to get the freeze buff. I want to get the freeze buff, even though you shouldn't really freeze and you should play for a roll to find higher power spikes instead. So for me, I think Sindragosa is going to line up a little awkwardly. I don't think she has all that much upside long-term to her hero power. She's also going to make you just like delay the minion you want instead of maybe buying it now. Sometimes I could buy the security rover now, or I could give it +1/+1. I'll buy this stopgap minion instead. And then like your whole thing falls apart. So I just don't think she's going to line up. I think this is going to be more punishing, make people misplay pretty often, a bit of a trap hero. If she gave it like +2/+2, then I'd consider it because I think that's going to stack up twice as fast and way more spiky the instant you do it. So you can maybe hold that security rover. Suddenly that's much more significant buff. But as it stands, Sindragosa looks like she's going to be, bottom third of heroes to me. I don't expect her to really shake things up too much. And there you go. Those are my thoughts on the 4 new heroes. I think a couple that'll be pretty strong, a couple that'll be a little more awkward and tough to use, but nonetheless, some fun designs. It's going to shake up the game. It also means you're just less likely to see some of the crazy stuff right now, because if there are something like 28 heroes in the pool, there might be a game where there's no Curator and no Toki and no AFK and no Nefarian, just because they may not get offered at all and nobody picks those high tier units. So it's going to make the game feel a lot fresher because your opponents are going to look very different. Even if just one or two of those are missing from every game, that's a really big deal. So I think it'll have some very positive implications on the game and some strong new options and crazy fun new stuff to play. I think Brann in particular is going to like snowball like crazy with some of those already super fun battle cry style builds. So I can't wait to see when these hit. I don't know when. In the meantime, though, I'm going to be trying to stay top 15, top 10 in preparation for the crazy $300,000 tournament I'm doing next week. That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I want to hear your thoughts on these heroes too. Anything I underrated, anything I overrated, whatever the case, tell me what you think, and I'm happy to hear those other opinions. That said, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.
Dragons take flight above the ice and snow.